All right, public policy. All right, so we have two types of spending that the government engages in. That is discretionary and mandatory spending. All right, so discretion means that you have some choice, you have some control over the matter. So discretionary spending is spending that has to be authorized by Congress and the president every single year. So this is what Congress and the president can directly control. Excuse me. Discretionary spending. The two biggest areas you can see from this handy-dandy visual graphic that I have here to the right. Military is far and away the largest segment of that. So in 2015, it was $1.16 trillion that Congress chose actively to spend. So they controlled $1.16 trillion of the budget, and 55% of that they chose to spend on the military, and then you can see an assortment of other various things. Education, number 2, but it is a distant second. On the other hand, though, you have mandatory spending. Mandatory spending, like the word mandatory, is hopefully denotes to you. Mandatory, it has to happen. It's required. Spending that does not have to be approved is how we're going to define that. So Congress, if they do nothing, it will automatically happen. So mandatory spending doesn't have to be approved by Congress or the president. The only way to change it is by passing new legislation. So the key thing, a couple key things here. Know the difference between mandatory and discretionary, but also which one is larger, and that is easily mandatory spending. Mandatory spending makes up about 2/3 of all of the federal budget. According to this graphic, Obama proposed $2.6 trillion in mandatory spending. That is a lot. That is well over double the amount of discretionary spending. Keep in mind that means that 2/3 of the federal budget, Congress and the president really do not have direct control over. This is something to keep in mind because when we hear presidential candidates, they will all, regardless of which party they are from, this is just a common politician's promise. They'll say, when I'm president, I will go through the federal budget and I will get rid of all this wasteful spending, blah, blah, blah. Well, if they did that, the biggest area that they can actually cut is from the military. But how popular do you think that's going to be when they come back and are like, well, we don't have a military anymore, but I saved us some money. And even if they did that, we would still have spent $2.6 trillion, even if we spent not one dime on our military, not one dime on education or any of the other things that the discretionary goes to, we would have spent $2.6 trillion last year. So where is all that money going? The biggest areas are Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You can see that those things add up to almost 90% of that $2.6 trillion. Social Security and unemployment benefits, that was about $1.3 trillion last year. Medicare, Medicaid, and now Obamacare as well, nearly another $1 trillion. So that is where most of our money is going. Remember, Congress can change it, but they'd have to pass a new law to replace or to alter the old program. And remember that they would need a filibuster-proof majority to be able to do that. So this is very difficult to actually change mandatory spending. All right, entitlement programs. So talked about these already. This is just another term for you. So with your mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, these are examples of entitlement programs. Definition is that they provide benefits to people who are entitled to them, those benefits, that means, by law. So there's a law saying that if you are 65 and a half, you have worked in this country, you're an American citizen, and you have paid payroll taxes or Social Security taxes, you are now entitled to receive Social Security. If your income falls below a certain amount, you are entitled to receive Medicaid or welfare. So that's entitlement programs. All right, we have two types of entitlements. We have means-tested and non-means-tested programs. So first is non-means-tested. These provide benefits to people regardless of their income. Things like Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment. It does not matter what your income is. If you qualify, you qualify. You're entitled to that money. If you've paid into Social Security, you qualify, so you get Social Security. So that is a non-means-tested program. On the other hand, we have means-tested programs. These provide benefits to people based on their income. So the reason that you qualify is because usually it is a low income. So you qualify for welfare, which the real name of that is temporary assistance for needy families, or food stamps, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. So you qualify for that because of your income, so that is a means-tested program. Problems facing these programs, specifically, this slide is talking about Medicare and Social Security especially. Well, we have a very large generation of people called baby boomers that they are now beginning to retire in the last 3 to 4 years or so. So as a result, 77 million, huge generation. So there's going to be more people that qualify for Medicare and for Social Security. So that's a problem because there's going to be a lot of people that qualify to receive those benefits. And this is a weird problem to have, but people are living longer. There's longer life expectancy. When Social Security began, life expectancy of a man in this country was about 59 and a half. Today, that's up to about 78. So not only are more people going to receive Social Security, but they are going to receive it for longer. That's why it's a problem. So I guess we're saying people are living too long. Or something like that. That sounds really dark. So I didn't say that. You did not hear that from me. And the last problem is that there are less workers paying in. There are not actually less workers. If we added up the total amount of workers, that wouldn't make sense. Our population is much larger. What this does mean, though, is that for every one person receiving Social Security benefits, there are less workers paying into it. So it's as a ratio. And that ratio in the 1950s, there were 18 people working, paying into Social Security for every one person receiving Social Security benefits. Today, that ratio is down to 2 to 1. There are only 2 people working, which means that they pay into Social Security through their taxes, for every one single person who is receiving Social Security. So that is not a recipe for success for this to last much longer, which is why by 2030 to 2035, it is expected to be insolvent at its current pace. So what can you do? What are some potential solutions? Well, we could raise the age requirement, so make the person have to be older to receive it. We could lower the benefits so they don't receive as much per month, or we could raise taxes and make all of us people paying more into it. None of these are popular politically, and that's the problem. And that's why we probably won't solve Social Security until we absolutely have to, which is like when it's actually going into crisis mode. That's how American politics works. So I wouldn't expect this to be any different. But the solutions are obvious, but they just aren't politically viable right now. This has been a LaMoney Production.